Let's put this thing back together, and we'll start with the gear shift, which need cleaning out and re-greased. The pivot point on this gear shift has got a big pin that goes through, but the centre is bolted with this bolt. You can see that bolt, I haven't cleaned that. There's no water or rust got in around the shank of that bolt because it goes in tight through the centre of that pin and is bolted firmly to the pedal rack or in the footwell. So that bolt doesn't turn, and because it's tight at both ends, no water can get into it. But the actual pedal pivots on this section, which I've wire brushed this end of it. You see there's an O-ring there. I haven't wire brushed this end, O-ring there, and there's a reduced section in the middle there, which is designed to hold grease. So the two O-rings on either end and grease between it should provide a bearing surface inside the bore of the pedal that with the O-rings there, the water shouldn't get in there either. But now after 25 years, there was no grease in there, and the surface is slightly damaged. It is slightly loose. I'm going to not do much to the bore here because it's difficult, but I'm going to replace the O-rings, continue to clean up this pin, this end of the pin, replace the O-rings and then pack it with grease when I reassemble it. Now, it's a similar thing on the foot brake on the other side. It's just a larger diameter pin. So that's what I'm doing at the moment. Okay, so that's the pin with a new O-ring on it, a whole heap of grease in that reduced section, and the bolt just goes through and holds that centre pin solid to the frame. If your pin is jammed up in there, there's a good chance it's pivoting on this bolt. I think that's what was happening with my other bike, and that just leads to the bolt being worn out and the whole thing becoming very sloppy, and it needs to be pulled apart, and then this centre pin, if it's jammed, it needs to be sort of punched out, cleaned up, new O-rings, new grease, and see how you go about jamming it back in again with the bolt. Okay, with that bolt back in there and tight, it pulls those two brackets together and tight against that pin. The pin stays stationary, as I mentioned, and then that lever has got no side play and it feels smooth as. It might be riding on those new O-rings a little bit, doesn't really matter. That feels brilliant now, and no noise, no clatter, should be perfect. It's a similar setup with the rear brake pedal. This pin's relieved in the middle for some grease. The pin itself turns with the brake pedal, and the centre bolt is just locked up. That's an O-ring there and an O-ring there that I will replace, and now again they're designed to stop grease getting into the journal, and there are grooves in the outer bearing, which in this case is welded into the frame, that those O-rings sit into. So yes, I think that washer can be clamped tight against the pedal there, so this can come up tight. Anyway, I'll clean this up on the wire brush, find some new O-rings for it. So some new O-rings. Wire brushed up the bolt and the washer, and gave the stud there a wire brush. You can see it's welded into the pedal itself, so it must turn with the pedal. This bolt stays, well, it must also turn with the pedal, but this acts like a shoulder bolt, and so the center pin can tighten up fully, and there's no chance of any pivoting happening on this pin. I can't really see what I'm filming, but the idea is, if you can see it, it's the white powdery finish is what the rust converter does to where it's dabbed on rust spots. And that steering column under there, these shocker mounts, platforms, I think they might be zinc plated, where the powder coating's missed down there. I'm thinking that maybe these frames are zinc plated and then powder coated, and that where they rust, they've lost both the zinc and the powder coat. But in places where the powder coat is chipping, it is basically just the zinc plated metal that forms the powdered surface. So all the underside of these bits of frames have got a bit of paint on them now. You'd see that in my previous videos. But the rust here has powdered up. This chrome part of the exhaust, I sprayed some rust converter onto it, and well, the rust has come off. I can't see what I'm filming because of the sun glare, but you might get an idea. I've then sprayed the bike again just with a hand spray mist to wash any pooled phosphoric acid off. Again, there's parts in here where there was rust around those joints that have converted, and this platform here is white. The theory might not really follow unless that tow bar's got white powder on it as well. Down in here, white powder. Anyway, all those spots have been, and in here, these parts were definitely just spot rust areas that the rust converter has powdered up. So I'm leaving it out in the sun at the moment to dry the water out that I've fired in around. None of it's actually pooling in that tray as such, so There's a little bit in that brake lever there, but I wire brushed when it was off, and then put some phosphoric acid around it, so that might be an indicator there that when water in there has dried, it may well have evaporated off everywhere else, and I'll drag it back in the shed before I look at giving it a spray on this top side. Anyway, I'll finish there. So I've shot some paint on everything, oversprayed everywhere as well. Just all those powdery spots have now been covered and more. So looking up under there, it, as I said in another video, it covers a multitude of sins. It pretties it up, and hopefully in this case delivers another level of corrosion protection. Those white spots on those trailing arms have gone, and I had a look in that brake just out of interest, hadn't done that prior. It looks quite clean inside, as I sort of expected at this stage. So around the tow bar, looks like it probably could have gone a bit thicker on there, but that's okay. I put a bit of black on the exhaust in under there as well. Big dribble line in the end of the exhaust there, and a few runs in other spots. But the overall effect is good, and it'll dry nicely, I suspect. So, what's a run amongst friends? Anyway, she's a bit of a cleaned up girl now, and time to hang the wheels on it, take it for a ride around the front yard, and then start putting the plastic things on it and packing it up. That's that screen, that thematic fan, fitted back in, a little bit of a wipe and a clean up. That's the connection for the electrics of the thematic fan, and this is the drain tube going up to there for the drain on the thematic fan. These bolts need to be out for that shield to go back. That was probably all I needed to do, but it was good to take it out and get it clear of the machine. The thematic fan works. I've put the recoil starter back on, and I found some 8mm hex head M6 flange bolts, not too different to the original Suzuki ones. The flanges are slightly bigger, I suppose, but I got those from Classic Fasteners in Adelaide. A new oil filter came in the post today, so I went out and bought some new engine oil to get it changed over. Get out to your shed and have some fun yourself.